Did you tell Aaron Levy this was coming?
I did.
So he knew?
He did know.
Okay, because he must be sitting there going, great, so your previous best ideas are Amazon's going to be a $3 trillion company, Tesla, and now Box, which is tiny compared with these guys, you think belongs in the upper echelons of companies that are best positioned right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the framing that I used was, if you are interested in artificial intelligence and you believe it has value in the world in the future, which I think it does, then there are really only a handful of companies you can be long. Amazon and Google are the obvious ones, and then in unpacking what else was around, we found Box.
What about Dropbox, which just went public? It's bigger, but don't they have the same advantages as Box?
Yeah, Dropbox is a great company, and Drew's a good friend of mine, but what I would tell you is that Box has much deeper penetration into the enterprise. And when you talk about customers who are sticky, and who are willing to pay millions of dollars or potentially tens of millions of dollars a year on a predictable basis. It typically isn't consumers that do that, but large Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 companies, and Box is, I think, penetrated almost 70%.
So you think it's going to be sticky? It's not the kind of thing, because my familiarity with it is, companies need someone to kind of manage stuff in the cloud, and so maybe Box got there first, but maybe Dropbox looks good tomorrow, or maybe one of the other cloud providers. Why can't someone just come in there?
That's a great question. I mean, when you think about how sticky something is, the most important thing to look at is this concept called churn, which is how fast are people leaving the service. And specifically, you can look at companies leaving the service or the amount of dollars that you're losing. And in any of those metrics, Box is phenomenal. It is probably the top decile in terms of its ability to retain customers and grow revenue. And so it is an incredibly sticky thing where once a decision is made, it takes a very long time for it to be unmade.
How big do you think Box can get, or how valuable, how good an investment do you see this being?
Well, so this is a $3.3 billion company that I think has a huge margin of safety. It is one of the cheapest stocks around. It is growing at incredibly fast rates. And I tend to think, when I think about these businesses, can they 10x in 10 years? And I think this is possible to do that as well.
So you think it could grow from a $3 billion to a $30 billion company?
Over 10 years, I think it can.
Wow. All right. Maybe someone will come in and swoop. I mean, they'd be an attractive acquisition target first, or?
I think you are probably right in that as people look at how they expand into AI, many of these large Fortune 500 companies themselves will say, who is somebody that I can buy that gives me a foothold into this market? And at the application layer of AI, these guys will be one of the best.
Let's talk about artificial intelligence for just a minute, because when you were talking earlier, I was reminded that a lot of AI is powered by big data. And what is big data? Well, it's needing to aggregate all of our personal information, which now there's a lot of backlash about. So is privacy a threat to big data and a threat to AI? Is there any way that all of that can coexist?
It's an enormous threat, and I think the way that one has to think about it is in the following way. When somebody gives you free software, or somebody gives you something free in general, you the consumer, I think you have to ask yourself, am I the customer? And when I'm a customer, I have rights. So think about, for example, when you buy a car, right? You give over money. Ford gives you a great vehicle, but they also give you a warranty. There are laws that protect you, et cetera, et cetera. But then if you actually don't pay anything, I think we have to be really open to the idea that maybe we are actually not the customer, but we are actually part of the product itself.
Yeah.
And in that context, I suspect what happens is that governments will have to get more involved so that they create the proper guardrails. They think of the welfare of citizens, and then they create laws and regulations that allow us to think about data privacy in a different way.
So let me ask you about Google, which you have highlighted as one of the companies benefiting from this whole shift to AI. Google today is called out by the Journal as being maybe worse than Facebook with regard to data collection. It's just that we aren't as aware about it, and we don't blame it for 2016 or what have you. So if that's the case, then and I, as a user, say, well, I don't want them to have all this information or all this power, or the regulators come in. Is that an existential threat to Google achieving what you think it can achieve?
I think it's important to make sure that when we're talking about data privacy, we try to figure out who knows what. And in the case of Google, the reality is they actually don't know who you are. They may know a location of a phone. They may know a random email address. They may know a bunch of search queries tied to an IP address. But it is very hard for them to actually know your first name and your last name. There are really only a handful of companies, Apple, Facebook, and a handful of others.
So you think that's the difference, is those companies that actually know us as the person with the name attached? And you don't think Google's one of them?
Well, I think that there's a hierarchy of this, and I think that we can ask a pretty logical question about who knows those kinds of things. Look, The IRS knows your first name and last name and address. Other government institutions do. State and local police do. And in terms of private businesses, there are only a real handful that do. And so I think when regulators and governments, et cetera, really internalize that, the same requirements and protections that they demand of others, they'll demand of these companies.
So are there any, let's go back to the markets for a second and some ideas, companies that you like, are there any big traps out there that you see? You know, maybe some of these companies that have become so big, so loved, especially lately, and that you feel like there just is no there there?
No, I think that most of these big cap companies are indelible for a reason. They have phenomenal business models. They all have phenomenal moats. These are all great businesses run by great teams. I do think, however, that where they become successful, where they continue to compound success, it probably makes sense to take a step back and start to ask ourselves, where are other markets in old legacy businesses who cannot embrace the same technology? How are they positioned? And I think that's where you're going to see, unfortunately, a lot of job destruction if we're not careful. You're going to see for sure a lot of value and market cap destruction, and you're going to see some really iconic businesses go by the wayside over the next few decades. And I think that's really sort of the point where we need to have a different kind of conversation, which is how do we better allocate these gains so that we can protect jobs, so that we can actually grow wages, and we can be more humane in how we build the economic vibrancy.
Two quick last questions for you. One, as it pertains to Facebook, is when's the last time you spoke with Sheryl Sandberg?
Actually, I saw her this past weekend.
And what's your read on things?
I think that these guys are doing the right things. I think that they're working in support of privacy. They're trying to figure this out. It's a really hard job. It's super nuanced. But they're trying hard, and I think they'll figure it out.
Do you hear Jeff Gundlach say he would short it because he didn't like the way that Zuckerberg's appearance on the Hill went?
Yeah, I think that if you're going to short Facebook, you have to do it for probably more than technical reasons, quite honestly. I think you have to understand other things that, frankly, don't exist yet in the business. There is a vibrant user business, there's vibrant revenue growth, and so until those things change, we can agree to disagree.
Last question, because we've seen the success some of your previous picks here have had. What's made you more money, your Sohn picks or the Golden State Warriors over the last couple of years?
The honest answer is the Sohn picks, because the quantum of the magnitude of the dollars is bigger, but the Golden State Warriors, I would say, are nipping at its heels.
When do you sell? I mean, you got to know when to buy, but you also have to know when to sell.
I really believe in this Buffett idea where once you buy really high quality businesses, the best thing you can do is just never revisit them.
And that includes a basketball team?
Yeah, in fact, the reason why I would tell you that is that I think that in a world where we're all in front of our phones all the time, things that give us a connection to the people around us, things that bring us together physically in an environment, have huge premium value. And one of those things is sports.
Yep.
Now, movies can do that potentially, music can do that, but I would put sports at the top of the pecking order there in terms of its ability to bring people together.
Well, I know I'm cheering for him. We got to get Steph Curry back in the lineup first, okay, and then we'll see. Chamath, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it. Chamath Palihapitiya joining us here at the Sohn Conference.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.